When God first led us to a different state with just enough for one night at a hotel, we went to one of the places that I used to love that I had visited once a long time ago. And we stayed a few nights there, and then we ended up switching between all these different suburbs that all surrounded the big city of Chicago. And the cities are just on top of each other. There's so many little suburbs, and they were all really beautiful. But we would constantly have to check out of a hotel and then go somewhere while we waited for God to bring the next promise of support. And I usually had to engage my faith in different ways. I would write on my blog. So we would often go to a library. And one of my favorite memories, I wanted to share with you this today, but one of my favorite memories during this last few months is I was at a library. I couldn't even tell you what city I was in because we had moved to so many different ones. We going to different hotels all the time, and we checked out of our hotel room and it looked like a dead-end path. Like, I thought that maybe that was the end. There was no way it looked to survive, except for obviously I had a promise from God and a promised outcome even now to where this whole thing ends. Like, I've seen the ending, I just don't see the middle parts, and that's where we travel by faith. But even though God made me a promise to show up and bring us into a beautiful place to stay, I wasn't able to wrap my mind around how God could help us. And I remember being in this library, and at that time, it's quite opposite of now. Instead of being freezing cold like it is now, it was really hot, and it was like summertime, and it was really scary, and I felt so alone, and I felt like I was a foreigner in a strange country because I didn't know my way around. I didn't recognize anything. I didn't know anyone. And when the library closed, I didn't really know what to do at that point. So I sat in a car and I kept telling myself that God would show up. And I had to avoid worrying about how much gas I could keep in the car in the heat of summer to keep the air conditioning running, or how we would survive. I had to resist all the what-if scenarios of all the bad things that could go wrong. I had to keep telling myself that God was there and that He is all present, and He wouldn't forget us or abandon His promise. After all, He took us there, and where God guides, He provides. And I think the scariest part was not being in a place that was familiar and not being able to see how God could ever help us. It was beyond uncomfortable to endure, and I had to ignore the pain that was trying to rise up from the anxious pressure of the moment. And then God started to encourage me to thank Him as though I had already received what we needed to go to the next hotel, and to stay in a mindset of gratitude and celebration. And I knew I had to ignore every feeling or thought of fear because it would consume me with grief and agony and unbelief. It would become like a flood, and I wouldn't be able to move my vehicle any longer. So every road seemed blocked, and I could not think of a single way that God could help us. Yet I was getting these reminders from God that He would rescue us, and He was going to take us someplace really nice, somewhere like we went before that I love so much. And all through the day, the Lord kept highlighting me a specific person and showing me their name, but I didn't believe it because it didn't seem likely at all. It just didn't make sense in my mind how this person would choose to help, because it was someone that God had recently called to deliver help from His promise of love support. And I didn't think He would help, or this person would help again. And my own mental limitations were becoming an enemy to my faith. So I was so surprised when I received a sudden message from this person and the money we needed to go back to the beautiful hotel that God had us at before. And it was gorgeous. It had French doors and beautiful linens and just made us feel so good. It was full of comfort. And on the way to pick up the provisions for that next refuge from God, there was a specific number that God showed me as a promise of what He would deliver. Yet again, I didn't believe it because it didn't seem likely at all. However, I was corrected by God when the exact amount that He showed me is what showed up. And God took us back to that delightful place where we were blessed for 2 nights there in the loveliest room that I adored. It's my all-time favorite of all the million hotels God has had us in. And I had to repent for not believing because I was too focused on all the ways that it couldn't be possible, instead of thinking how it would be possible. And God is always sovereign. And then as we were at that beautiful place, I was immediately praying about what to do next, as God had showed me that He was moving us again. That hotel was already out of availability, and God highlighted a certain name to me again, the same exact name that I didn't believe before. By that time I was shaking my head, and I didn't believe. Again, I didn't believe. It didn't seem possible. I couldn't understand, and therefore I ruled it out as a way that God could bless us and uphold His promise to be our home and endless river of support. But then the person that God had revealed to me contacted me out of the blue, just at the exact perfect time. This time, God really shocked me because He put it in that person's heart to put us in a resort hotel in the mountains for 4 nights. And it was luxurious. Every detail was covered, and all we had to do was show up. God went way over my unbelief and my logical understanding to perform a miracle that really put doubt in its place. The Lord moved us to the top of this mountain and gave us luxurious comforts in the loveliest resort. I love this place so much that I decided that that is exactly the kind of resort homes I'm going to build for the homeless once God gets me to the end of this journey. It was all completely free for us. It was so beautiful. I wish I was there right now. It was so beautiful and peaceful and serene with the nature and the birds all around. And it was completely free for us from God. And I was rubbing my eyes in disbelief and absolute amazement. It was so beautiful. It had super comfy beds, a washer and dryer, a full-size kitchen, a jacuzzi tub with the bubbles and everything, which was an event all on its own. It had a fireplace, so at night we would light up the fireplace and make it feel so cozy and comforting inside. It had the most spectacular balcony view of the treetops at the top of a mountain, and I felt like it was heaven on earth, and it was just like God promised, a lavish place from His intentional love. And there was even a recreation area that had an indoor pool and another hot tub and a game room that the kids absolutely loved so much. It was so incredible, and I can't wait to build a resort like that for other people who are in my situation, to give them the comforts of God, because the refuge of comfort is the best feeling in the world, and it's something that most people take for granted because most people have a home. Most people have a refuge over their head. They don't have to worry every day where they're going to sleep. And going through this rugged path, God has given me a deep empathy for people who don't have that security. It's heartbreaking to go through. In the bathrooms of this place, there were photos of hot air balloons rising into the sky, and I loved them so much. I took pictures of them, and it was above a jacuzzi tub, and it just reminded me of how God lifted us out of the place of sitting in the library, waiting on a love rescue that God promised, up into to be taken up into mountainous views, and that fully swept off of my feet with His goodness. It's funny because before all that happened, God kept showing me He was going to show us a very wealthy experience from the fierce, fiery faith testing. And I didn't believe it because I couldn't figure out the solution for myself or understand how. And if I can't figure it out, if I don't have control, then I figured it's not possible. And so that whole experience really killed a lot of the limiting beliefs that I had in it. It was very humbling to me, thinking too much of myself and too little of God's power. And I'm really learning a lot about the dangers of overthinking. And my lesson from that encounter was not to worry about how, but to trust and believe without having to see the full path ahead. Overthinking and overanalyzing can be very harmful to faith. So instead of judging whether or not it's possible based on what makes sense in our minds, it's better to just expect God to show up and not worry about how it can be done. Let Him deal with the details and you just receive. So instead of feeling the frustration of trying to figure out how God can do it or whether or not it feels like it's possible, it's better to just celebrate. Take God at His word and celebrate in the fulfillment. And trust that God has already gone before you to open a door, make it happen, connect all the dots. He can handle it. If God makes you a promise, we have to believe that He is able to fulfill that promise and that He was faithful to His word. May we all have that simple and trusting faith of a child to believe that God can and will do exactly as He has promised. Going through that experience, it felt like we were dreaming, and it was the highlight so far of this entire journey. Although the Lord keeps showing me that He's taking us to a place and down the road, maybe soon, hopefully soon, that is like the mountaintop experience, but it's going to be different. From what I believe, it's going to be right smack downtown in a skyscraper, but a similar resort-like experience. The details are still to be delivered, but that's kind of what I've been seeing. And I'm excited for sharing that experience with you. If you would like to learn more about some of the adventures we've been on, or read the love letters, the prophetic love letters that are on the blog, there's probably 800 or 900 love letters on my blog. And you can go in the search bar, and if there's a certain word that you're looking for, like if you want to find all the love letters about hope, or all the love letters about fear, or healing, or wealth, or transformation, just type it into the search bar and it'll pull up all the love letters like that. And there's also 2 categories. There's of the blog posts, which are the diamond page. And the 2 categories are the love letters, which are the prophetic love letters of God, which are made with His promise, so they're powerful and life-changing to someone that will believe them. It's not just a prophetic word, they're powerful promises. And then there's the faith living posts, where I share all these adventures that I've had with God, revelations, gifts. I share also, like sometimes I'll share prophetic number charts or dream symbols or something like that. You can find it all at diamondsfromthedust.com. Thank you so much for your time today, and I love you so much. And I look forward to the next chapter with you. God bless you.